Okay guys, we are here at the part 2 of this video for installing your very own PBX, your very own phone system, PBX in a flash. After you finish the install, you will see after you finish the install, you will finish the command line information. You will probably see that it's completed. It will give you the IP address. Once you get the IP address, you pretty much type that into your browser. In this case, our IP address is ending in .83. That's just how my PBX gave me the IP address. Once you type in the IP address in your web browser, you will see this page here. This page here is very important, especially when you're very new to this particular phone system. On the left hand side of this page, you see RSS feeds, different updates from the actual build community itself. You can find this build community at pbx-in-a-flash.com, and they do have a community tab there, so you can look around, find any type of debugs, defects, exploits that people have found over the years, or even over the course of this particular build that I'm using. So this page is very vital to finding out what kind of bugs are happening, and it definitely keeps it up to date. So the very top here will be the most recent. So anything you find that pertains to your box, be sure to check it, click on the link, and find a solution to avoid any type of exploits on your server itself. So we're at this screen here. At this screen here, you have the voicemail and recordings, flash operator panel. That's definitely good for offices, and meet me conferences, which is good for conferences. But we're going to try and get into the meat and potatoes of the actual build. So from there, you will come to the very bottom here and click on users, flip it over to admin, and you got more features here. Now you have the PBX administration, the Linux webman, which is very good for managing your actual box, and of course menu configs, where you can actually customize this menu as we see here. So if you want to go into the actual PBX, FreePBX, which is the actual interface of the PBX. In this case, it logs me automatically. I've been here before, but if you remember the password that you put in the server when you first put in the install, will be the same password here. So the username would be maint, which is M-A-I-N-T, and the password will be the password that you set up during the install, when it asks you to put in your password while you're installing the server. Put that in there, and you have this page pop up here. Now on the left hand side, you will see a ton of features and a ton of options to go through. You might want to go through these one by one. These are different options to set up the actual box. So like, for example, you want to set up like the voice response, welcome to XYZ company, press 1 here, press 2 here. You would definitely hook it up to the IVR, which stands for interactive voice response. And in this option here, I can show you, create an IVR. You can name it, give the announcements. Also, the very bottom here, you can click on which number that they can press to go to different spots or different locations within your box. It's one of the most important things if you're planning on using this for your business. But the main thing to actually start the process, if you remember, if you actually clicked on the other video that we have here about the X-Lite or creating a soft phone, you will be using the same kind of SIP credentials that was used there. It's kind of roughly the same method. Only difference is that this method here is going to look a little bit different. Like for an example, click on SIP trunks here. Well, I'm gonna go back here. I'm sorry. You click on trunks. You click on SIP trunks or any other protocol that you register or you request from the carrier. You're going to fill out most of this information. Now, once you get down to the outgoing and incoming settings, you notice that you have like a little sandbox here that's going on. What we would do, we will send you an email in this format, the exact same format you're seeing here. We would already have it pre-configured where you can just pretty much copy and paste, stick it in here, create a name for it, and click OK or submit at the very bottom to register. For example, for this account here, if you remember, I had an account. Let's see, can I Actually, I do not have that anymore, but if you get the point here, when you see the email from us, it will look identical to this: the host, the username, the secret, the type. Of course, we have a few more things to fill out here, but copy that, paste that, submit changes. You should be registered. Now, to check that, you can always go back to FreePBX system status, and you will see in this option here, you will see total of active channels, or you will see like another option at the very bottom, the amount of registrations. So you can definitely tell if it's registered or not. For now, the biggest one that I see an issue with is when you're making or receiving calls. That's the most important thing, right? You want to make sure that you got your company, is ready to go, you want to receive some calls, but how do you do that? It's actually quite simple in this build here. You click on Inbound Routes. You fill out the information here, the description. Let's say it could be an office phone number, and we would give you the list of numbers that you purchased, that you ordered. You put the number here, for example, our home number here. Okay, you might want to leave that blank because it's pretty much going to identify based on what you put here. So the server is going to look and see what number that you called from, which could be this, or it could be the, in this case, the number that you called from, or the number that you called to. So you might want to be careful when you put the call ID number, because if it's in here and you're looking for a 404 number and somebody called it with a 678, this call would fail. So I would recommend leaving this blank unless you have specific rules of how all your numbers will be coming into your server, which we can discuss that in a more advanced video. So let's scroll down here. So you got the number in, you got a few features like the privacy or the language, and also the caller ID lookup, which is very good on this build here. Before there was no good caller ID lookup, now they actually incorporated that in this build. Set destination. For an example, since we don't have a destination here, you will probably see things like the IVR, like you see here, the feature codes, something special, phone book, or kill the call. What you also see here was like extensions, or like your green groups that you might set up, your call queues. Once you click on that, it actually gives you each call queue that you can go through. Since we don't have any call queues at this time, I can tell the call, once the call comes in, if you actually called 678-460-1475, which is our office number, I want the call to terminate, and I want it to terminate not by hanging up, but I want it to terminate and put you on hold. So when you call that number, if it hits your server, the person who's calling you will hear music. But of course, you have different options here where you can stick on ring groups. So when it calls in, it can actually hit the ring group. It can hit all of your extensions. It can still play music. So while they're sitting here listening to get music on your IVR or your PBX, the calls are going through your office to make sure that somebody picks up the call. Now, how would your office make outbound calls? Another good question. Outbound routes. If you notice, folks, the inbound, outbound routes, and a lot of these settings I'm going to show you later is very quite simple. They laid out the design very well, so you can actually incorporate that, and pretty much anybody in your company who have authorization to this phone system can actually use it without any problem. So they definitely did a good job of making the web interface very intuitive and easy as possible. Now for the outbound side, you can set up different rules on outbound. Let's say you want ordinary call to go out for everybody in the extension, and let's say you want them to dial 1 in the number. So for this observation here, you can click on dial pattern wizard, because some of your calls might be international, some of your calls might be considered long distance. It definitely depends on your provider. Some of them require the country code and number, and some of them do not. For us, we do require the country code. So for us, it would be long distance. So when you dial the number, you have to dial the 1 and the area code and the number. Or if you're in a different location, you have to dial as international, which will show that as well. So this would be an example of dialing an ordinary US number outside of your office with this string. Now let's say you want to do international, which they do have wizards for that. Like international, you click on this, it automatically gives you 011. The idea is when you dial 011, it will take the 011 and send. It will know to match that pattern and send the call out as intended. Of course, you have different rules, different setups. In this case, it would be generic rule. But if you want to send a call out, you want to change the caller ID. This is what the top part here for. So let's say if you want to dial with a 1, anybody who dials out from your phone system with a 1 would match. Oh, I'm sorry, with 11 digits or pretty much one of the number for US. It will match the first pattern, and it will also incorporate any other rule that you have under there. For an example, if you want them to dial one of the number to go out, you can set the call ID to go out as this number. You override extension, so everything that hits 10 to 11 digits or 1 and 10 digits will hit this rule. It will set this information up, set up the call, and route out. Now, for an example, let's take this rule out here. Let's submit this. Oh, I'm sorry, I gotta put a name there. You're gonna name that US calls. It appears that this doesn't like me for some reason. Ah, that would be why. Oops. What we saw here is that once we made the change and it requested a name, it kind of reverted back. But that's done for security reasons. You don't want to make too many mistakes on this if possible. But of course, you can always go back and change them. Okay, I think I see what I did wrong here. It appears that I really have to put a trunk in here. Let's create a quick example trunk. Yeah, you can definitely see that when you're creating a lot of these steps here, you definitely have to kind of use the building block method. Some things would not work or incorporate without you actually filling in some of the basic information. Like, for example, when you make an outbound call, you do have to have a trunk to register first. So they put these safeties in place here. We're just going to make something up here. Oops. Okay, so we created a test trunk. Even though this is not a real trunk, but it still works. Now, if you make any changes, you have to go to apply configuration changes. Make sure it works. Okay. So let's go back to the outbound trunks here. Let's say US. We're going to say 678. You can leave this here. Pretty much, if you can set caller ID on the actual extensions also, and you can also set them up in a one big rule in here. So whenever they call out, it will be different. It will be the same number. That could be effective if you have a lot of people in your office and they make outbound calls as one central group, and they don't need people to call them directly. But of course, you can set up different rules like dial 9, dial 1, dial 8 to do different things, like set your own caller ID or set your own routing password, which you will probably show that in a later video. So let's go back here. We're going to add a long distance route. Since we're calling it US. We're going to select the register trunk or the trunk you want the call to go out on. So you have multiple trunks, you have multiple providers, you can choose which route goes out. For this route, if you dial 11 digits, it will go out of this trunk with that caller ID. Let's see what it worked now. Ah, perfect. As you can see here on the side here, you created that route. That will be the scenario for the outbound. make an outbound call for one of the number, it will send out as that caller ID. It will be sent out as that test trunk here. Let me create one more example here. Go to international. So we're going to say NTL. International might be a little bit different. For an example, you might want to say a +1. It really depends on your preference. And we're going to say international. And let's say you have more than one provider, or you might have another provider that you prefer using for international. Of course, you will highlight it here. Submit changes. Perfect. You see on this right hand side here, you will see that there's 2 routes involved. Let's save that configuration. So right now you could pick up a phone in theory. If you had extensions, you could pick up a phone in theory. You dial 1 and the number for US. It will route as the US outbound route. If you dial with a 011, it will route as that number. For example, we just put a +1 in front of there because some international providers prefer +1. Some of them don't, some of them do. It really depends on your preference. You really have to get in tune with your provider to get these certain criteria. Now, extensions. Very simple extensions. Extensions are very simple. It looks exactly the same as the trunks, outbound routes, but you have a little more leeway on each extension. So you have options to set up SIP, IX2 extensions, ZAP extensions. Depends on what kind of configuration that you have. Let's create one. Won't hurt. Let's say extension 111. Okay. Display name. This is where you already order your soft phones or your hard IP phones, and you're ready for them to interconnect with your server. We can leave that blank right now, which you can change that. Depends on your preference. Let's say secret will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just something simple. Natting, very important if your phones are not in the network or is inside the network. You can do remote extensions. If your phone's inside of the network, you don't really need natting, but it wouldn't hurt in case that extension registers on the outside. Now, of course, you have certain phones like Cisco 7900 series phones. They don't do very well with natting on the inside, so you have to turn this option off. Of course, down here you have the option of selecting voicemail, pager. So for this account, let's enable voicemail. They might want to leave a voicemail. So let's IPComms 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to put something there. Oh, that will leave the same. Oh, enter a valid voicemail password using digits only. Oops. That might be good enough. They definitely did very well in putting a lot of fail safes in this build here. Before, you can stick a number in there and it'll work. But in this case, they lock it down so you don't have any type of security issues as much as possible. Later on, you can actually turn this off, but I would definitely recommend leaving this on. It saves you so much time later on, especially if you suspect any type of fraudulent calls or the type of hacking going on in your system. So I would prefer to leave all that on and hopefully just deal with that if need be. Alright, so now we created one extension. So the ideal is you get a soft phone, or you get a soft phone from the video that we showed you earlier. You put in the information about this registration. So extension 111, the secret that you set, and the domain or host you register to will be your PBX IP address. And that's all. Once you register that up, you can make the calls. You will hit the outbound routes like normal. Your calls go out. Now, since we created an extension, we can actually create the inbound routes as such. So let's say we create the inbound route again. So it's going to be office. We'll leave it, everything's fine. That's there. So when somebody call your number, this particular number on your account, you want to say, I want it to ring to my extension. Let's confirm that. And boom, you're done. So when they call that one number, it will come into your device, it will ring, and you got the call. That would be an example of how you set up the inbound route. And let's say if you had an IVR or anything, you can set the IVR to say, I don't think we have any. Oh, we have one. So we set the IVR, and the IVR will come in, and you can set it to where it press 1, 2, or 3. And once they press 1, 2, or 3, you will still see this destination field in almost any of the settings. So when you press 1, you can tell it to go here. Or you can tell it to go back to the IVR, back to inbound route, back to another number, anywhere you can think of, even a cell phone number if need be. So the IVR is very important inside an office, and it makes it very simple where you configure an IVR and it routes to any destination that you need or that you want, for an example. So we already discussed the outbound routes, which I think is very important. Now we're going to lightly talk about the queues. Now the queues, I'm not going to set one up here, that'll be in the next video, but you set up the queues, you set up the ring groups. Pretty much will do the same thing. One would have a little more intuitive routing involved, and other would just ring extensions inside of its group. And you can create as many groups as you want and as many queues as you want. You can even put ring groups in each queue, and you also put many queues in each ring group. They made it very intuitive, so you can put any type of routing that you want, routing to this PBX anywhere you want it to go. Really, you really have to think outside the box on this particular PBX, because they want to make sure that it will be your one-stop solution to make sure all your calls get routed. I would definitely recommend you guys going through a lot of these menus just to look around and see. They make things as plain as possible so you can understand, especially in the setup field here. They also have a tools tab for the more advanced settings. You run into issues, you run into problems with the PBX, not quite right. You could definitely go into different settings on this side where it could be done in another video. For example, like an asterisk SIP setting, you can set as many things like the netting, where the call goes out, what IP address it shows going out, which codecs you can use, the different type of videos that can use, even the RTP timers, hold messages, registrations. There's a lot of stuff you can really tweak your PBX to work as optimal as possible with your provider. So definitely go through all of these, especially if you have any issues like that. You click on the tools tab on this side here, and it can really help you get intuitive into the PBX without actually going to like the command line or calling a technician at your company to go through it. They made it where you can actually do a lot of this yourself. So be sure to look at this area as much as you can. It really help you out a lot. Okay guys, for this video, that will be it for this one. Like I said, be sure to subscribe, be sure to like our videos, be sure to email us, give us a call, let us know if you have any questions, and I will catch you guys later.